Forget the Barcelona you grew up watching. Forget the club that sold academy kids just to register a squad, that begged La Liga for financial fair play exceptions, that treated a Champions League run as a financial risk instead of an expectation. That club is gone. What's replaced it isn't trying to climb back to the top of European football. It's making sure nobody else ever gets close to it again. 2 straight La Liga titles, back-to-back domestic doubles, the most feared attack in Spain, 2 seasons running, and this week, a reigning Ballon d'Or winner signed a 4-year contract to join them, by choice, over Real Madrid. This isn't a club climbing out of a crisis anymore. This is a club that finished the rebuild and started the takeover. Real Madrid truly believed they'd found the answer. New structure, another Galactico summer, another "This is finally our year" campaign, sold to their own fans. And for one afternoon, it even looked real. Madrid took a Clásico off Barça and celebrated like the entire balance of power had swung back to the capital. It hadn't. Barcelona didn't blink. They went back to Madrid's own stadium when the pressure was at its absolute highest and beat them again on the biggest night of the season. Madrid didn't just lose a football match. They lost the argument. The fallout was so brutal that Florentino Perez went and hired the one manager reckless enough to inherit that mess. A coach walking into a rebuild while Barcelona were already walking into a coronation. But here's the part that should genuinely terrify the rest of Europe. Start at the back. Pau Cubarsí is still a teenager on paper and already the most trusted defender in the building. A World Cup starter for Spain who reads danger before it exists. Behind him, Eric Garcia has become the single most dangerous kind of squad player. Unbreakable, positionally fluent, capable of playing 4 different roles in 4 different games without the level ever dropping. In midfield, Pedri is still the heartbeat, the player who can slow a match to a crawl or rip it open in 3 touches, entirely on instinct. Beside him, Fermín López has turned into one of the most lethal late-arriving runners in Europe, the kind of midfielder defenders lose track of a half-second too late, right as the ball hits the net. That's a backline that doesn't blink, and a midfield that dictates tempo without leaning on one overworked passer. And Barcelona hadn't even signed a single new player yet. Then there's Lamine Yamal. Already a European champion, already a World Cup champion, already the one name that makes opposition coaches rewrite their entire game plan in the pre-match press conference. And right now, he's still doing most of his damage from the touchline, which should worry every defense in Europe, because the version of Yamal who drifts inside and lives 20 yards from goal hasn't even shown up yet. Every summer signing exists to drag that version out of him. Anthony Gordon arrives fresh off a standout World Cup with England, bringing exactly the kind of relentless running and defensive snarl that lets Flick rotate his wide areas without losing an ounce of pressure. Karim Adeyemi adds pure, electric vertical speed, the kind of player whose first touch can already be the beginning of a goal. And already stealing headlines off the bench. 18-year-old Jesse Bisiwu, 2 goals in preseason alone, playing with the fearlessness of a kid who hasn't been told yet that he's supposed to be scared. Here's why that matters. If Gordon and Adeyemi drag opposition fullbacks wide and hold them there, the space in front of goal opens up completely, and that's exactly where Yamal wants to live. Width from the new arrivals, total freedom for the superstar. That's not luck, that's design. And after all of that, Barcelona still looked at the squad and decided it wasn't finished. Rodri's arrival this week says everything about where this club is headed. Reigning Ballon d'Or winner, World Cup champion, widely considered the single best holding midfielder alive. He chose Barcelona over Real Madrid, turned down the chance to be rebuilt around, and picked the club that simply needed him to finish something already nearly perfect. Understand what that actually does to everyone else on the pitch. Pedri no longer has to be the only outlet under pressure. Dani Olmo no longer has to choose between pushing forward and covering back. The fullbacks no longer have to gamble every time they bomb forward, because for the first time, there's a player behind them engineered specifically to erase the mistake if it goes wrong. Rodri doesn't just add quality. He hands out permission. permission for 6 other players to be braver than they were 12 months ago. And somehow, the most terrifying part of this rebuild isn't even the players Barcelona paid for. Because while the first team keeps getting stronger, the academy hasn't stopped producing. Hamza Abdelkarim has already scored in preseason and moves inside the box like he's got a radar. The instinctive, ruthless finisher Barcelona haven't reliably produced since their last true number 9 walked out the door. There's a teenage forward already drawing comparisons to the club's greatest academy graduates, still unfinished, still learning, and already good enough to make opposition scouts nervous. Barcelona might not even need to go shopping for their next striker. He might already be 15 minutes down the road, waiting for his name to be called. Now put the entire picture together. A backline anchored by a teenage World Cup starter, who already defends like a 10-year veteran. A midfield holding a metronome, a destroyer, and the best defensive midfielder alive, all inside the same 18 yards of grass. A front line built around a generational talent who's about to be unleashed by 2 signings whose entire job is clearing space for him. And an academy conveyor belt that keeps handing the manager teenagers who arrive ready, not raw. That isn't depth. It's redundancy at the highest level in world football. A squad where losing a starter to injury doesn't lower the ceiling. It just changes who's standing under it. Barcelona have stood exactly here before. And when they last built something this complete, it didn't just win trophies. It rewrote the rules of the sport underneath it. A midfield that simply refused to surrender the ball. A false 9-no defender could mark, because he never played like a striker was supposed to. A front line so devastating that rival managers stopped trying to beat them and just tried to survive the 90 minutes. That team collected trophies, but it did something rarer. It changed what football itself was allowed to look like. Look closely, and every great Barcelona side has been built from the exact same 4 ingredients. A homegrown superstar, good enough to bend the entire attack around him. A midfield that dictates the terms of every match it enters, elite signings who complete the picture instead of competing for the ball, and a manager brave enough to trust the whole machine at once. Yamal is the superstar. Rodri and Pedri are the midfield. Gordon, Adeyemi, and Bisiwu are the signings. Flick is the manager willing to bet everything on it working together. Here's the honest part. Because no dynasty gets built without exposing something. Flick's system demands his backline defend an enormous amount of space behind a suffocatingly high defensive line. One miscommunication, one lapse in concentration, and any team in Europe can be in behind Barcelona before they even realize it's happening. It is, without question, the single biggest structural risk inside this entire project. But here's the counter nobody's talking about enough. Barcelona didn't just spend this summer on attacking talent. They spent it on the one midfielder in world football built specifically to make that high line survivable, a player whose entire career has been defined by protecting exactly this kind of structure at the top of the sport, year after year. Sometimes the safest way to defend a high line isn't to drop it 10 yards. It's to make sure the opponent never keeps the ball long enough to attack it in the first place. Picture the whole squad again. A generational academy talent about to move into the most dangerous real estate on the pitch. A midfield featuring a Ballon d'Or winner who chose them over their fiercest rival. New attackers signed for the sole purpose of creating space for the one already there. And a squad that no longer fears anyone left on the calendar. This is not the Barca you grew up watching. That team was fighting to get back to the top. This one is being built so nobody ever gets to ask whether they belong there again. They've already conquered Spain, twice in a row. The only thing left is the one trophy that's been missing since 2015. So tell me, is this finally the Barcelona side built to go all the way? Or is that high defensive line about to be the reason it all falls apart on the biggest stage in football? Drop your prediction below.